You are standing on a patch of dirt at the edge of an American suburb. There is no house yet, just a utility stake, tire tracks, and a rectangular scar where a foundation might go. Your phone is in one hand. $398,300 median price of a new American house sold in June 2026 is on the screen. Then you swipe. A Chinese supplier is advertising a 40-foot expandable prefab house for about $4,999. Another listing sits around $4,500. Bedrooms, bathroom, kitchen, windows, steel frame, fold-out walls. $5,000. That sounds less like a house price and more like the down payment on a used pickup. And it is also deeply misleading. Because that $5,000 listing is not a $5,000 American home. It is a factory price for a manufactured structure. It does not magically include your land, foundation, permits, engineering, utilities, crane, trucking, insurance, local code compliance, or the 1,000 small things that turn a box into legal real estate. But dismissing it as internet nonsense would be a mistake. Because the most important part of that listing is not the price. It is what China has turned a house into, a product. And that is a much bigger threat to the way America builds. One American couple recently tested the idea for real. They ordered an expandable home from a factory in Hebei, China. The unit itself cost $15,800. After ocean freight, tariffs, taxes, fees, and delivery, they said the total reached $28,689. The structure opened to roughly 770 square feet, with a kitchen and bathroom already inside. So the price nearly doubled before it reached the site. And yet the strange part is that it was still cheap enough to make millions of people ask the same question. If a factory in northern China can build, finish, fold, and ship most of a small house across the Pacific for less than the price of many new cars, what exactly makes an American house cost hundreds of thousands of dollars? The answer is not one greedy company. It is an entire production system, or more precisely, the lack of one. Most American houses are still built as projects. A carpenter shows up, then an electrician, then a plumber, then drywall, roofing, HVAC, flooring, cabinets, inspectors, deliveries, subcontractors, weather delays, rescheduling. The house sits still. The workers, tools, and materials move around it. That sounds normal, because we have watched houses get built this way our entire lives. But almost no other mass-market product works like this. Imagine buying a car and having Ford deliver the frame to your driveway, then sending the engine crew next Tuesday, the wiring crew the week after that, and a painter whenever the weather clears. Housing is one of the few enormous industries where final assembly still happens outdoors, at the point of consumption, under local rules that can change from one city to the next. And America once came surprisingly close to industrializing this system. In 1947, on former potato fields on Long Island, William Levitt and his family began building what became Levittown. Their breakthrough was not an exotic material. It was organization. They broke house construction into roughly 26 specialized operations. One crew poured slabs, another framed walls, another handled roofs. Workers repeated the same narrow task while moving from house to house. It was an assembly line turned inside out. The product stayed still. The factory moved. At its peak, Levitt's system could turn out roughly 10 to 12 houses a day, and some historical accounts put later production even higher. By 1949, one of the homes was advertised around $6,999. Levitt understood something that still makes manufacturers rich today. Repetition destroys waste. Buy materials in volume, standardize dimensions, give each worker a repeatable job, remove decisions, remove waiting, remove surprises. But American home building never fully became car manufacturing. Instead, the industry remained intensely local and fragmented. And the numbers show what that means. In the National Association of Home Builders 2024 Construction Cost Survey, the average home in its builder sample had a sales price of about $665,000. Construction itself accounted for about $428,000. The finished lot was another $91,000. Within the construction bill, site work averaged about $33,000. Foundations were almost $45,000. Framing was roughly $71,000. Plumbing, electrical, and HVAC rough-ins together pushed major systems above $82,000. Interior finishes were the biggest category at more than $103,000. This is the first reason the $5,000 Chinese house cannot simply replace a $400,000 American house. A factory can make walls cheap. It cannot manufacture your lot. It cannot put a sewer line under your street from 7,000 miles away. It cannot erase local impact fees or pour every foundation in Phoenix, Pittsburgh, and Portland from the same mold. But look again at that cost breakdown. Framing, exterior panels, windows, electrical runs, plumbing runs, insulation, cabinets, flooring, interior finishes. A huge amount of what Americans currently pay people to coordinate and install on a job site can, in theory, be moved under one factory roof. That is the opening China is attacking. And now the story moves from Long Island to a place most Americans have never heard of. Hengshui, in Hebei Province. Search Chinese supplier directories for expandable homes, and the same geography keeps appearing. Hengshui, Fucheng County, Hebei. This is not a city famous for architecture. That is precisely the point. It is an industrial cluster. One local manufacturer, Heshi Integrated Housing, says its production facility covers roughly 50,000 square meters and can produce up to 5,000 expandable houses and 30,000 folding houses a year. Another Hengshui producer advertises daily capacity of 100 modular units. Others operate CNC bending machines, automated cutting equipment, coating lines, and dedicated assembly workshops. The individual numbers are manufacturer claims, so they should be treated that way. But the industrial pattern is obvious. These companies are not approaching a house as a one-off construction project. They are approaching it like an appliance. Start with a standardized light steel skeleton. Add insulated sandwich panels, pre-cut openings. Install windows. Run wiring while the walls are open and waist-high. Install plumbing, where fixtures repeat from unit to unit. Fit cabinets in the same positions. Then fold or compress the structure into a transportable shape. A job that might require multiple subcontractors making separate visits on an American site becomes a sequence of stations inside one building. No rain delay. No electrician driving 40 minutes because somebody forgot a fitting. No pile of drywall sitting outside under a tarp. And because manufacturers sit near other manufacturers, the house is surrounded by suppliers making steel sections, panels, doors, windows, fasteners, fixtures, and coatings. That density matters. Cheap labor is part of the story, but China has cheap labor is an increasingly lazy explanation for Chinese manufacturing. The deeper advantage is coordination. If a factory needs a different hinge, steel profile, or wall panel, it is operating inside an ecosystem already designed to make those things in volume. The supply chain is geographically compressed. So is the learning curve. Build one expandable unit and every mistake is expensive. Build thousands and a badly placed bracket becomes a production problem that can be redesigned, jigged, measured, and repeated away. This is where the $5,000 listing stops looking like a house and starts looking like an industrial warning. because the listing is not really competing with a finished American house. It is showing how cheap the manufactured portion of shelter can become when design is forced to obey a production line. And there is evidence that Americans are paying attention. The couple who imported the $15,800 Hebei unit did not receive a magical $15,800 house. Their reported total rose to $28,689 before considering every possible site-specific housing cost. They still needed land. They still needed a prepared site. They needed equipment to unload and unfold it, and depending on where such a structure is placed and how it is classified, an owner may face local zoning, structural, electrical, plumbing, energy, and permitting requirements. That distinction matters because America has two factory-built housing lanes that people constantly confuse. A manufactured home is built to a federal HUD standard. A modular home is built in factory sections but generally must meet the state and local building codes that apply where it will be installed, much like a site-built house. The Chinese listings online can look interchangeable. American law does not see them that way. A $5,000 expandable container may be perfectly useful as a temporary office, cabin, worksite accommodation, or structure in one jurisdiction, and completely unsuitable as a permitted permanent residence in another. That is the wall Chinese factories hit when they reach America. Not manufacturing. Regulation, finance, and installation. And this is why the disruption will probably look very different from the thumbnail version. America is unlikely to wake up one morning and replace suburban construction with millions of $5,000 houses arriving from Tianjin on cargo ships. The transport alone punishes bulky products. Local codes still matter. Foundations still matter. Skilled local work still matters. Warranty service matters. Mortgage lenders care what they are financing. And buyers still want houses that fit neighborhoods, climates, and resale markets. The smarter question is not, will America import China's houses? It is, will America import China's method? Because that method is already proving attractive, far beyond a few internet buyers. Permanent modular construction in the United States reached about $20.5 billion in 2025, across key market segments, according to the Modular Building Institute, representing roughly 5.1% of activity in those segments. Research cited by McKinsey has found modular projects can compress schedules by roughly 20 to 50%. Under the right conditions and at sufficient scale, cost reductions can reach around 20%, although bad logistics or poor factory utilization can erase the advantage. And the savings do not always arrive as a spectacular sticker price collapse. In one U.S. field study of multifamily construction, modular projects averaged about $243 per square foot versus $251 for comparable site-built work. That is useful, but hardly the fantasy of a house becoming 10 times cheaper. The bigger gain was time. The modular buildings finished roughly 25 to 30% faster. That is where the economics become more interesting than the retail price. A developer borrowing money for 18 months instead of 12 is paying for those extra months. A project that opens 6 months earlier can start collecting rent 6 months earlier. A builder who needs fewer crews on site can take on more projects with the same local labor pool. So modular construction does not have to cut the price of every wall in half to disrupt the business. Sometimes speed is the margin. And this is also why the cheap Chinese unit matters, even when it cannot be copied directly. It represents an extreme version of the same idea: push more labor into a controlled line, finish more of the product before delivery, and make the site behave less like a workshop and more like a docking station. That last part is crucial. A factory is only cheap when it is busy. A home builder can slow down by hiring fewer subcontractors. A modular factory has rent, equipment, staff, and production lines whether orders arrive or not. That is why modular companies have failed before. They build expensive factories before they secure enough repeatable demand. Then the pipeline dries up, the machines sit still, and the factory that was supposed to make houses cheaper becomes another fixed cost. China's clustered model attacks that weakness from the other direction. It does not need one giant company to own the entire future of housing. It has many producers using overlapping suppliers, similar materials and export logistics, competing to push the factory price down. That competition can be brutal. It can also produce uneven quality. A cheap unit with thin steel, poor insulation, non-compliant wiring, or inadequate wind and snow ratings is not a bargain. It is a liability with windows. So the future belongs less to whoever can post the lowest Alibaba price and more to whoever can combine Chinese-style manufacturing economics with American-style code approval, engineering, financing, and service. That could be a Chinese company building certified products for the US. It could be an American modular company sourcing components globally. It could be a giant home builder opening highly automated regional factories. Or it could be something in between, foundations and final connections done locally, while wall systems, bathrooms, kitchens, or whole modules arrive pre-finished. The disruption does not require the entire house to come from China. It only requires enough of the expensive site work to move into a repeatable production environment. And Washington has started to notice the bottleneck. In July 2026, the 21st Century Road to Housing Act became law. Among other changes, it altered federal manufactured housing law to allow homes with or without a permanent chassis. It also requires HUD to review barriers in FHA construction financing for modular projects and examine alternative draw schedules, one of the awkward problems created when a lender designed for gradual job site construction meets a factory that needs money earlier in the process. That does not suddenly make modular homes cheap. It does something more important. It acknowledges that the rules built around traditional construction can become part of the cost structure. Now go back to that empty suburban lot. The utility stake is still there. The foundation still has to be built. The city still wants plans. The bank still wants paperwork. And the $4,999 house on your phone is still not a $4,999 house. But it has changed what the question means. The important number is no longer $5,000. It is the gap between what can be manufactured cheaply and what still has to be coordinated expensively. China did not solve American housing. It exposed the part of the American housing machine that still behaves as if every home must be a custom outdoor project. The incumbents are not disappearing. American builders understand local codes, land, finance, climate, and buyers in ways an overseas factory cannot copy overnight. But the factory does not need to replace the whole industry to change it. It only needs to make enough of the old process look unnecessarily slow. So if someone offered you a code-compliant factory-built home that looked conventional, appraised normally, financed normally, and cost 20% less because most of the messy work happened on an assembly line, would you care that it did not begin on your street? That is the real fight. Not China versus American houses, manufacturing versus construction. And the winner could rewrite what Americans think a house is supposed to cost. If you like documentaries that uncover the hidden economics inside ordinary products and industries, subscribe. And tell me this, would you trust a factory-built home if it saved you $80,000? Or would you still pay more for one built the traditional way?